this will presumably work better today. I hope. Yeah. It turns out it turns out in my favor. Because you gotta have faith. Gotta have faith to faith to faith. Nope. Fred says nope. Well, welcome everybody to TUBBS. Glad you're here. Throttle Up Biker Bible Study. And tonight we're in Deuteronomy 24. So, covering a wide range of topics tonight. Let's see. Can't think of anything else that's going on. That's fine. Yeah, I could just sit there. Yeah. Gosh. Oh, the song references have started early. Oh, right. Before we get into all this exciting Deuteronomy 24, let's go to the Lord with a word of prayer. Lord, thank you again, as always, for giving us this place to get together and these hearts that choose to show up, Lord, to learn more about you. Lord, just be with us during this time, and for whatever is unclear when I go over it, Lord, just with the Holy Spirit, just intercede to grant understanding and wisdom of your word. So as we learn more about you, we can live to be more like a proper Christian should and really live it out. And not just have it in name or with words alone, but to actually live it out, Lord. So please bless us time we have together. Please open up our eyes, hearts, and ears to hear what you're trying to say. And let's jump in. Amen. All right. So we have yet another chapter starting out talking about divorce. So this must have been, at the time of the writing, a very hot button issue. So there's going to be a lot to go over here, but we're going to go through verses 1 through 5, maybe even 1 through 6 right here at the start. Yep. 1 through 5. When a man takes a wife and marries her, and it happens that she finds no favor in his eyes because he has found some indecency in her, and he writes her a certificate of divorce and puts it in her hand and sends her out from his house, and she leaves his house and goes and becomes another man's wife, and if the latter husband turns against her and writes her a certificate of divorce and puts it in her hand and sends her out of his house, or if the latter husband dies who took her to be his wife, then her former husband who sent her away is not allowed to take her again to be his wife. Oh. Technology being technology. All right. Yep. So, verse 4 here. So, if she leaves one husband and gets to the second husband, and the second husband gives her a certificate of divorce, or dies, one of the two. Yep. Then her former husband who sent her away is not allowed to take her again to be his wife, since she has been defiled, for that is an abomination before the Lord, and you shall not bring sin on the land which the Lord your God gives you as an inheritance. Okay. Well, you're going to be on 5 part 2. No, here, let me see the phone. Yeah. There we go. Oh. Yeah. So, verse 5 here, the first part of 5. When a man takes a new wife, he shall go out with the army, nor be charged, he shall not go out with the army, nor be charged with any duty. He shall be free at home for 1 year, and shall give happiness to his wife whom he has taken. So it should be this one. Yeah. So lots of different things to cover here. Let me see. There it goes. Yeah. So we're going to cover that. Yeah. So the commentary I was reading on the 1 year off part related to military service or other service to the state. Because, most of these people are going to have land. So they're going to have land to harvest and stuff like that. And other business type ventures. So the King James Version says business. Okay. Wonder if that's just a translation difference. Charged with any business. And cheer up his wife, which he has taken. Okay. Gosh, it makes it sound like she'd be sad that she got married. Yeah. Yeah, but it is a command though. He shall be free at home 1 year and shall give happiness to his wife whom he has taken. But before we get to the happiness, let's talk about divorce. So, I know. So, going back to verse 1 here. Divorce was allowed, but only in some very specific circumstances. The chief one being sexual immorality. As it always is. But, must have a cause for divorce. It must be official, just in the same way as the marriage, which is implied by the paper in the hand and the process of sending her away. So the husband can't just be like, one day, you burnt my toast, we're divorced, leave my house. It's an official process. So you can't just, it's supposed to be taken very, very seriously. And the Hebrew word for divorce means, at its core, a cutting apart. Just as, the two shall become one, this really is a cutting apart. It's not just a separation, it's very destructive. Yep. Yep. And we're gonna cover that too. What God has joined together, let no man cut asunder. So, and the thing here, before I get into the other part of this, the Hebrew word for uncleanliness means the nakedness of a thing. So, by it saying, he's found some indecency, other translations might say uncleanliness, it is meaning really like sexual immorality at its core. And it has to be, so the first cause for divorce is the sexual immorality. The second cause for the divorce is the no favor. So, because of the sexual immorality, the husband might, not all, but some might forgive, but he simply cannot look upon his wife with favor anymore, or in any favorable light. Then they can get divorced once those two qualifications are, met. The husband must be so troubled and that he cannot see her in any other way, and is presumably mistreating her because of said act. So what I was kind of taking out of this is if the idea is that if there could be no forgiveness, favor, going back, or working on issues, then the divorce would be permitted. But I also see this as a potential for more or worse sin if they stayed together, especially if she could not find favor in his eyes. Yeah, it could turn to hatred, yeah, and which opens the gate to a wide range of much worse behavior. Yep. Abuse, yep. 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 So it's just it's opens up the floodgate. Yeah. So the idea here is that he could never see her the same or treat her the same as if before it would have happened. It does go both ways, as we're gonna find out. So the men and women at Jesus' time could divorce as well, and presumably it was common. So let's turn to Mark chapter 10, verse 12. Yeah. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Alright. Yep. I'm not even there yet. 10 verse 12. So, and this is to say that women can divorce. And if she herself divorces her husband and marries another man, she is committing adultery. So the implication here is that divorces could happen on either side if this is specifically called out, especially in red letters. So, yes. The woman. Yeah. Well, the woman at the well. See, what I was just about to get to was Matthew 19:8, which talks about the hardness of the heart. So there could and should be forgiveness. However, mankind being flawed. So let's turn to Matthew chapter 19. Gosh. Yep. So well, and they weren't even following their law at the time anyways, because they didn't drag the man with him. So if you're gonna, you know, sentence one person to death, for sin, and when the law specifically says, hey, you caught them both, they both should be put to death, not just the woman. So Matthew 19 verse 8. He said to them, because of the hardness of your heart, Moses permitted you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it has not been this way. And this ties into, either party simply cannot see the other person as a broken person, a sinner who, could be forgiven because of the hardness in their heart. That's why divorce was permitted. Does that make sense? Well, women are boneheads too. So, yeah. So, because sometimes we have hardness in our hearts, maybe the divorce is permitted and is actually deemed the best course of action. Yeah. So, yeah. So hardness meaning no forgiveness, unable to forgive like God forgives us. So now, the second part of this is the former husband cannot take her back if the latter husband divorces her or dies. And this is to really, I think, strengthens the second marriage because the wife couldn't leave the second husband for the first. Oh, I didn't get as good of a deal as I thought I was getting, so I'm going to go back to the first husband. And it means that the first divorce is final. She can never go back to him. He can never take her back. It's totally final. Well, she doesn't, then she's just an adulterer. No, it's final. As far as I read it. Yeah, but even if he dies, that's not a divorce. That's just being widowed. I think the idea here is that the divorce is so totally final that there's no going back, and it's the finality part of this that is really important because that means there's no casual marriage or divorce. It's serious. It's permanent. No, you're fine. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, it's so well, and you know, you can't just keep, casually marrying and divorcing, trying to work your way up the ladder. Oh, maybe I'll get a rich man by marriage 5, kind of woman at the well type deal. Granted, it didn't work out that way for her, but, it's not like getting a new job. You're not job hopping. So, yep. And then, like we already discussed, newlyweds are exempt from military or state service for a year to bring happiness to one's wife, because we can turn to Proverbs for what happens when we don't have happiness with one's wife. So let's turn to Proverbs 21:9. Proverbs 21:9. It is better to live on the corner of a roof than in a house shared with a contentious woman. Yep. All right. 29:9. Proverbs 29:19. Yeah. All right. Oh, whoops. Sorry, it's Proverbs 21:19. Yep. 21. Yep. So Proverbs 21:19. It is better to live in a desert land than with a contentious and vexing woman. And then finally, Proverbs 27:15. A constant dripping on a day of steady rain and a contentious woman are alike. Yeah. So, I think this is the reason why they gave him a whole year to share happiness with the wife. Because, so, I think this is important, you know, as a husband, you know, you're supposed to be there to provide happiness for your wife. And, like, you can't cause problems for your wife and expect to have, you know, happiness in your life, you know, and conversely, if you have happiness in your life, she's gonna have happiness in hers. So you know, it's the rising tide raises all ships, at least for the first year. Thanks, Keith. Yeah. Yep. Never go to bed mad. Yep. hmm So if in this case, if you have the certificate of divorce and you go and remarry to a new husband, you are not an adulterer. Only if you sleep with someone else. So in this day and time, if the husband handed his now ex-wife the certificate of divorce, she would go back to her father and live in her father's household. She's not just out on the street, and she's not just out hooking up just so she has a place to stay. So she's not committing adultery unless she has, well, it would be fornicating, not adultery. Because adultery is in the bounds of marriage. Fornicating is outside the bounds of marriage. So both are sins. It's just different context. So she wouldn't be committing adultery in that case. So what I read in Mark 10:12, where the woman divorces her husband, it's because that divorce was not legitimized, which is why it said she committed adultery. I hope that clarifies. All right. Any questions on that part? Are we pretty clear? All right. Telephone, come on. All right. Deuteronomy 24, verse 6. Is this going to work? Y'all are going to have to look in your Bibles because the phone's not working, so. Deuteronomy 24, verse 6. No one shall take a hand mill or an upper millstone in a pledge, for he would be taking a life in pledge. Okay, let's stop there. Why do we think a millstone is important? Yeah. Yep. Yep. So the millstone is essential for a family's livelihood and forbidden to be used as collateral for a loan because of that. And, you know, taking a life refers to can't feed himself and can't feed his family. But the subcontext here is if you're giving a loan, you know, don't profit unfairly from poverty or the difficulty of others. And, you know, non-essential items could be given as collateral or a pledge is what they're meaning by this. Collateral. So non-essential items could, but something essential like being able to feed your family is not. And the other part of this, like James brought up, is don't take collateral that prevents a man from providing for his family and getting out of debt. So that's the big part of this. So you can't trap someone in poverty or debt. Yep. So, any questions on that? All right. Deuteronomy 24, verse 7. If a man is caught kidnapping any of his countrymen of the sons of Israel, and he deals with him violently or sells him, then that thief shall die, so you shall purge the evil from among you. I mean, I could get there. Which is literally my next note. Yes, the story about Joseph and his brothers. Joseph's being sold into slavery by his brothers. So, it was common practice at this time to kidnap people and sell them into slavery, just like Joseph, and yes, his brothers should have been put to death. But it's just like nowadays with all the sex trafficking stuff of children, this practice has not changed at all. I mean, and just like James said, until a man can fix his heart, it'll never change. But this is going on nowadays, Look at Thailand. Look at the Epstein client list, Look at the United States. Look at what's coming across the border. $100,000 missing children who have come to this country and are now no longer seen. Yeah. But this practice commanded the death penalty. So yes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, it's just, don't kidnap your countrymen and sell them into slavery. But clearly it's written about because it was a problem. All right. Any questions on that part? Nope. All right. Deuteronomy 24 verses 8 and 9. Children, do I need to separate you two? Okay. Okay. No offspring in here. All right. So, Deuteronomy 24 verses 8 and 9. Be careful against an infection of leprosy, and that you diligently observe and do according to all that the Levitical priests teach you, as I have commanded them, so you shall be careful to do. Remember what the Lord your God did to Miriam on the way as you came from Egypt. Okay. So, Leviticus 13:14, chapters 13-14 talks deeply into leprosy. But the command here to act swiftly is to let it not become a plague across all of Egypt. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So the shunning of the undesirables, yeah, is kind of the same way as the lepers were treated. But the command here is to quarantine them so it doesn't become a plague, which later turned into them being shunned and not taken care of, which is not good either. But now, Numbers 12, specifically Numbers 12:14, talks about Miriam getting leprosy. And then God afflicted it with her because she plotted with Aaron to question Moses' authority. And then Moses prayed on her behalf, but she was still outside the camp for 7 full days, unable to enter the camp at all, in quarantine, because of the leprosy. So that's why it says, remember what the Lord your God did to Miriam on the way as you came out of Egypt. This would be a very clear example to everyone here. Hey, it can happen. All right. Any questions on that part? All right. Then I guess we'll move on. Deuteronomy 24:10 through 13. When you make your neighbor a loan of any sort, you shall not enter his house to take his pledge. You shall remain outside, and the man to whom you made the loan shall bring the pledge out to you. If he is a poor man, you shall not sleep with his pledge. When the sun goes down, you shall surely return the pledge to him, that he may sleep in his cloak and bless you, and it will be righteous for you before the Lord your God. Okay. So a couple different things here. Taking collateral was okay, but it had to be done in such a way as the person could keep their dignity. You're not supposed to go into the people's house, take their collateral. You had to let the poor person keep their dignity. Now, if the collateral incentivizes paying back the loan, for one. But if the collateral was the only thing the person had, return it so they could keep warm, or, really just have mercy. You can come get the pledge in the morning, and until the loan's paid back, but don't let them sleep without it so they can keep warm. The same context in today would be like, hey, if someone pawns off their little buddy heater because it's all they have, return it before nightfall so they don't freeze to death. So, now, and I was kind of thinking about this last night. Maybe if the person went inside the house to get the collateral, they could be covetous for something else that the person didn't want to pawn, such as a family heirloom. They might be letting go of the things that they could to cover a loan until they got paid or whatever and could pay back the loan. But they might have some things that are so special to them that they won't let it go. Yeah. 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 So like James is saying, a man's home is his castle, so don't invade his castle just to eat collateral for a loan. But if we turn to Amos, chapter 8, this has been perverted. I forget which page Amos is on for me. The minor prophet. Alright, give me a second here. It's such a small book, it's actually really hard to turn to. Okay. Alright. Amos chapter 8. Chapter 8, 4 through 6. Went too far. Nope. When you hear this, you who trample the needy to do away with the humble of the land, saying, when will the new moon be over so that we may sell grain, and the Sabbath that we may open the meat market, to make the bushel smaller and the shekel bigger, and to cheat with dishonest scales, so as to buy the helpless for money and the needy for a pair of sandals, that we may sell the refuse of the wheat. Yep. Yes. This. Oh yeah. Or as we call it nowadays, shrinkflation. Oh yeah. Well, and these people are bemoaning that, the holy days are taking too long, and they want to open the meat market to make more money, and cheating with dishonest scales, so they can buy the helpless for money and the needy for a pair of sandals. So they're taking all these people's possessions so they can own them. So, kind of interesting. Kind of a correlation there. All right. Any questions on that part? No? Yep. I agree with that. All right. I agree with that. We are a slave to necessity, such as food and warmth. All right. So now Deuteronomy 24 verses 14 and 15. You shall not oppress a hired servant who is poor and needy, whether he is one of your countrymen or one of your aliens who is in your land or your towns. You shall give him his wages on his day before the sun sets, for he is poor and he sets his heart on it, so that he will not cry against you to the Lord and it becomes a sin in you. So pay your workers on time. They're counting on it. Don't oppress your hired servants by not paying them, and treat them fairly and kindly, And the Lord hears the cries of the oppressed. So if we turn to James chapter 5, verse 4, which our brother James should be able to quote for us. He says no. Where are you? James. All right. So James chapter 5, verse 4. Behold, the pay of the laborers who mowed your field, and which has been withheld by you, cries out against you, and the outcry of those who did the harvesting has reached the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth, the Lord of Sabbath. So, the Lord hears the crying out, just like we see this theme repeated in Exodus when the Lord hears the crying and the groaning of the Israelites under the Egyptians. So, the Lord hears the crying out of people who have been cheated. Yep. Yep. I agree with that. The difference between crying and groaning. All right. Now, verse 16. Fathers shall not be put to death for their sons, nor the sons be put to death for their fathers. Everyone shall be put to death for his own sin. So the parents do not bear the iniquity of their children. But a couple things to point out here. Every person past the age of accountability is responsible for their own sin. And as Brother James has brought up, the age of accountability is what? 13. So, yes, it was 13, now it's 18, as today's law. So, parents are not responsible for the sins of the children are not responsible for the sins of the parents. The parents might blame themselves for their wayward children, but it might not be really all their fault. Once they're past the age of accountability, they make their own decisions, but they will also suffer their own consequences. But can you guys think of an exception? Well, let's turn to Joshua chapter 7, 16 through 26. It's the next book over. Chapter 7. This is This is when Israel loses their first battle. So Joshua chapter 7, verses 16 through 26. So Joshua arose early in the morning and brought Israel nearby the tribes, and the tribe of Judah was taken. He brought the family of Judah near, and he took the family of the Zerarites, and he brought the family of the Zerarites near man by man, and Zabadi was taken. He brought his household near man by man, and Achan, son of Carmi, son of Zabadi, son of Zerah, from the tribe of Judah was taken. Then Joshua said to Achan, My son, I implore you, give glory to the Lord, the God of Israel, and give praise to him, and tell me now what you have done. Do not hide it from me. So Achan answered Joshua and said, Truly I have sinned against the Lord, the God of Israel, and this is what I did. When I saw among the spoil a beautiful mantle made from Shahir gold, and 200 shekels of silver, and a bar of gold weighing 50 shekels in weight, I coveted them, and I took them, and behold, they are concealed in the earth inside my tent with the silver underneath it. So Joshua sent messengers, and they ran to the tent, and behold, it was concealed in his tent with the silver underneath it. They took them from inside the tent and brought them to Joshua and all the sons of Israel, and they poured them out before the Lord. Then Joshua and all of Israel with him took Achan, the son of Zerah, the silver, the mantle, the bar of gold, his sons, his daughters, his oxen, his donkeys, his sheep, his tent, and all that belonged to him, and they brought them up to the valley of Achor. Joshua said, Why have you troubled us? The Lord will trouble you this day. And all Israel stoned them with stones, and they burned them with fire after they had stoned him with stones. Yes and no. They raised over him a great heap of stones that stands to this day, and the Lord turned from the fierceness of his anger. Therefore the name of that place has been called the Valley of Achor to this day. So, it makes it sound like it was one man. However, kind of the subtext here is there must have been some conspiracy between the family members. That's a lot of gold. That's a lot of silver. It's a lot to hide. But it's very grievous, which is why they purged that evil from Israel. But I also think the other part of this is no one can covet what those people had, so they all had to be put to death. Kind of an interesting exception there. But at this time, the sins of an individual affect all of Israel. And I'd say it's really much the same today. The sins of one person affect a whole community, which can affect a whole country. So, very grievous. Yep. So it's like dealing drugs. It spreads out the effect of said task. All right. Any questions on that part? No. Okay. Verses 17 through 18. He shall not pervert the justice due an alien or an orphan, nor take a woman or a widow's garment in pledge. But you shall remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and that the Lord your God redeemed you from there. Therefore I am commanding you to do this thing. So, to remember where they came from, remember that God was fair and compassionate with them, so they should be the same to each other. And bless others and forgive others how we have been by God. So, any questions on that part? All right. Then verses 19 through 22, the end of the chapter. When you reap your harvest in your field, and have forgotten a sheaf in the field, a sheaf is a bundle of the harvest, kind of wrapped up, ready to transport, but they forgot it. So when you forget the sheaf in the field, you shall not go back and get it. It shall be for the alien, the orphan, and the widow, in order that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work with your hands. When you beat your olive tree, you shall not go over the the boughs again. It shall be for the alien, for the orphan, and for the widow. When you gather the grapes of your vineyard, you shall not go over it again. It shall be for the alien, for the orphan, and for the widow. Remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt. Therefore, I'm commanding you to do this thing. So, what do you guys think is the main takeaway here? What? That's a lot. Uh-oh. I got one. I'm overloaded over here. Alright. So, really the command here is to don't totally harvest the fields so that the poor and the travelers and the widows and stuff can glean from the fields to provide for themselves. So it's kind of like ancient welfare. The difference being here is it helps the poor by having them harvest for their needs. So they still have to go out in the fields. They still have to work. It's not free, but it's kind of like welfare so they can provide for their own needs with dignity. So kind of an interesting aside there. But yeah, so if you forget some of your harvest in the field, leave it there. Don't keep going over your fields over and over to get every last ounce of profit you can get out of it. But I was kind of thinking about it. We don't do this today in our country. We harvest everything and we cut it straight to the ground. There's nothing left with the big combine harvesters and all that. So it's just interesting. Maybe something was gained by switching over harvest to machines. Maybe something was lost by switching over harvest to machines. Kind of a thought there. Any other questions on this part? Any questions, comments over the whole chapter? I feel like you're all here powering down. It's like that movie from the 90s, Short Circuit, when the battery pack gets pierced and the robot's like... Alright, y'all. Well, we're going to go into personal and private prayer request time, and then I don't believe we have anything coming up this Friday for pray and play, and then we just have regular church service Sunday at 11, starting the new book of Revelation, well, the new old book, new series, with a recap on Revelations 1, and then again next Wednesday at 6 o'clock. Alright, see you guys next time.